Look at any picture of New York City, and one color jumps out at you. It is a single specific shade of yellow, used on roughly 13,000 cars in Manhattan alone, and that color is not chosen for visibility, or for tradition, or for branding. It is chosen because, in 1907, a Chicago entrepreneur named John Hertz commissioned a study at the University of Chicago to figure out exactly which color the human eye spots fastest at distance. The answer was yellow, and every yellow taxi cab on every street in New York City is the direct result of one 1907 marketing experiment, and that's the reason why. There are about 13,500 medallion taxi cabs in New York City. Every single one of them is the same exact color. Pantone 1-2 number 2. C. A yellow specifically called taxi cab yellow. It is the only mandatory color in the entire New York City code. The cars come from different manufacturers with different shapes and sizes and engines. They are all painted the same. Tradition does not explain it. The first NYC cabs were red. The checker cab was checker patterned. Nothing about NYC originally said yellow, and almost nobody knows why. It was not chosen by a city council, or by a transit commission, or by a public competition. It was chosen by one man in 1907. In 1907, John Hertz was a former boxer running a struggling second-hand car dealership in Chicago. To unload his unsold inventory, he started a taxi service. The cars sold poorly because customers couldn't see them coming from far enough away to flag them down. Hertz did something nobody had done in transportation. He hired the University of Chicago to run a study on which color the eye spots fastest at distance. The lab tested every color in the visible spectrum at every distance from 20 feet to a quarter mile. The answer was yellow, a specific yellow with high luminance and a slight green tint, visible to the human eye from further away than any other color in normal daylight. Hertz painted his entire fleet that exact yellow. And what happened next changed urban transportation in America forever. Other operators saw what was happening and copied immediately. Within a year of Hertz's first experiment, half the cabs in Chicago were yellow. Within 5 years, Hertz Yellow Cab was the largest taxi company in Chicago. Within 10, it was the largest in the country. Hertz himself founded the rental car company that still bears his name, and every other taxi company in America copied the color. Within a generation, yellow had become the universal visual signal for a hireable cab in any American city. It started as a marketing decision. It became a piece of urban grammar. By the 1960s, New York City had thousands of taxis from dozens of operators, and most of them were already painted yellow because of the Hertz precedent. But not all of them. Some were red, some were green, some were checkered. In 1967, the city's Taxi and Limousine Commission passed an ordinance making yellow the mandatory color for every medallion taxi. The commission cited the Hertz visibility study explicitly in the ordinance. 60 years after John Hertz painted his first cab yellow, the city of New York wrote his marketing decision into law. Every yellow cab in Manhattan you have ever seen is the legal echo of one second-hand car dealership in Chicago in 1907. This pattern shows up everywhere once you look. School buses are yellow because of a 1939 standardization conference led by a Columbia University engineer named Frank Sear, who ran the same kind of visibility test Hertz did. Construction equipment is yellow because OSHA studies in the 1970s found yellow construction vehicles had the lowest accident rate. The McDonald's Golden Arches, post office mailboxes in Germany, high-vis safety vests on every construction site, all chosen for the reason Hertz chose his. Highway warning signs, traffic dividers, emergency vehicles, all yellow for the same reason. It is the most visible color the human eye knows how to detect, and we built our entire civilization's visual safety system around that fact. Here's the part that almost nobody notices. Hertz did not invent the color yellow or the taxi. He did not invent painting cars to make them visible. He spent maybe a few $100s on a study that paid him back 10,000 times over within a decade. What he invented was the willingness to pay for the data. Every other taxi entrepreneur in 1907 picked a color because they liked it, or because their wife liked it, or because the paint was cheap. Hertz hired a university to find out which color worked, and his cars sold themselves from a quarter-mile away, while his competitors had to be flagged down at 20 feet. So the next time you see a yellow taxi in New York, remember that color is not aesthetic. It is data. It is one specific 1907 experiment written into the laws of a city 60 years later, painted on every cab you have ever flagged down. And that color is the most visible thing on the entire street, by design, on purpose, with a reason behind it that almost nobody who ever rode in one knows. A boxer in Chicago paid for the answer once. Every American city is still using the receipt every minute of every day, more than 100 years later, and almost nobody who reads it knows who paid the bill. Cities are full of hidden experiments. You walk past their results every day without noticing. The yellow on every taxi in New York is one of those experiments. A specific shade of green-tinted yellow, chosen in 1907 by a former boxer running a struggling car dealership in Chicago, based on a study he paid the University of Chicago to run for him. Yellow is the color the human eye spots fastest at distance. It is also the color of school buses, construction equipment, highway signs, traffic dividers, emergency vests, and warning labels. All of them are yellow for the same reason every taxicab in Manhattan is yellow. Because somebody, at some point in the last 120 years, paid for the data and trusted the data once they had it. You cannot walk down a street in any modern American city without your eyes being directed by yellow. That direction was not accidental. It was researched, measured, written into law. And almost everybody who uses it never thinks about it once. Look at the cabs. Look at the buses. Look at the signs. You are reading something that was authored a century ago by a man who simply asked which color the eye sees first, and then trusted the answer, all the way down to writing it into law. That is the secret of urban design. Most of it was authored 100 years ago by people you will never know. If you liked this one, there's a whole channel of stories like it. The reasons behind everyday things you've never asked. Subscribe so the next one finds you.